Hi everyone, I hope you're having a great weekend, and if you're celebrating Easter, happy Easter. I wanted to hop on and share with you some of my favorite medieval biographies. We are in the second quarter of Historathon 2023, and this period focuses on the Middle Ages. Last week I shared with you some of my favorite books on the Middle Ages, and this week I want to specifically focus on biographies. These biographies that I'm going to share with you are just on men. Next week, I will share with you my favorite biographies on women. I do want to keep them separate because I think the way that women and men are treated throughout history, the Middle Ages being no exception, is different by contemporary resources and by historians. So I just want to have a separate discussion there. So without further ado, I will share these with you in chronological order. We've got quite a few to get through, but hopefully this gives you some ideas for Historathon 2023 if you're still not sure what you want to read. So firstly, we have The Greatest Knight by Thomas Asbridge. This is a biography on one of England's most famous knights, William Marshall. William Marshall led a very interesting life. He was the second son of a minor lord. He was not well liked by his father, but through a series of, I guess, serendipitous events and blood relations, he managed to get a firm stepping in his role as a knight, as a young knight, and as I mentioned, quite serendipitously, he manages to rescue Eleanor of Aquitaine from being kidnapped, and he ended up serving Eleanor and her family, a series of 5 kings throughout his life. So he led a very interesting life. I think Thomas Asbridge did a good job of detailing his life beyond just what the legend says. This is well worth a read. Anyways, moving on. Next, we have King of the North Wind by Claudia Gold, a life of Henry II in 5 acts. I really enjoyed this biography of Henry II. I think Henry II probably doesn't get that much attention when it comes to the Plantagenet rulers of England. He is the king who manages to, I'll backtrack a bit. So he is the first Plantagenet king of England. The name Plantagenet comes from his father, Geoffrey of Anjou, who wore a yellow flower in his hair. That was called Plantagenet, I think. But his mother was fighting a brutal and long civil war with King Stephen, who usurped the throne from her, and eventually Henry II manages to reclaim the throne for the family. The reason why I like this biography so much, and the title will give you an indication, I think whenever you read a bio of Henry II and his family, it's well known that they didn't get along and they were always scheming against one another. And that's quite a shame because he seemed like he loved his family very much. But I guess what she puts it down to is the fact that he didn't want to give away power. And the title, as it suggests, this could, his life could almost be a Shakespearean tragedy. He had so much promise, he had so much success and power, and I guess towards the end of his life, there was just a lot of pain and suffering when it came to his family. But anyways, this was a great biography and I really enjoyed it. There was a lot more on Geoffrey of Anjou in here, which I enjoyed, as opposed to other sources or resources, so that was quite enjoyable to hear more about his father. But we move on. So the next bio, I've got a few Kindle reads here to share with you. So next we have The Song of Simon de Montfort, and this is by Sophie Thérèse Amblay. I think she's French. And I think that was my French pronunciation. But anyways, this was an excellent biography on Simon de Montfort, who in England led the Barons' Wars against Henry III and ultimately had a hand in the creation of the Provisions of Oxford. Simon de Mumford was the younger son of his father, who was also named Simon de Mumford. And this Simon de Mumford is pretty famous in England for leading or being involved in the Albigensian Crusade, which was an inquisition in the south of France to stamp out the Cathar heresy. So what Sophie explains throughout this novel is just maybe how his father had a real impact on his personality, because Simon de Montfort could be seen as a real crusading fanatic in England. He also had a very interesting relationship with Henry III. They were on friendly terms, but he married his sister behind his back, which the king wasn't too happy about, and it seemed like he had a much more forceful personality than Henry III. So it was a very interesting look at the dynamic battle between Simon and between Henry, in making sure that his prerogative as an earl wasn't stamped out by Henry, who was also trying to preserve his royal prerogative. But anyways, it was a very great biography, and I think Sophie did a great job of highlighting all aspects of his personality. Simon, I guess this isn't objective of me, but he's not the most likable person in history, for a lot of reasons, but he did, I suppose, a lot for England. So yeah, it was a great biography and I enjoyed it a lot. Moving on, we have, let me just see what's next in the queue. We've got this, A Great and Terrible King, a biography on Edward I by Mark Morris. So this follows from the biography that I just showed you. So Edward I had a hand in these barren wars. Henry III was his father, and perhaps the way he saw Henry III being, pushed around, I reckon might have had an impact on the formation of Edward's personality. And I wanted to read a biography on him just to understand a bit more about his formational years. Because when you read or hear about him in pop culture, he's known as Edward the Longshanks, the Hammer of the Scots, just a real brutal, self-assured king. And I wanted to hear more about him, the other aspects of his personality, and I thought this was a great biography for doing so. So as we move on, going back to the Kindle now. I hope I'm staying in chronological order. I'm pretty sure I am. But anyways, this is by far my favorite biography in the Middle Ages. This is Ian Mortimer's The Greatest Trader, and this is about the life of Sir Roger Mortimer, who was the first Earl of March. He was the one who deposed Edward II, had an affair with his wife and withheld power, and was basically the puppet master for the government behind the scenes for Edward III for a period of 3 years. And I've always wondered why someone who was seemingly so intelligent and scheming and so resourceful as Roger Mortimer, seemingly for the greater good, for deposing Edward II, would do something that seemed like it was just a surefire way of getting himself executed. He must have realized that the path of destruction that he was on wouldn't last. And I think Ian Mortimer did a great job of explaining things from Roger's perspective. He has a great way of getting into the head of a medieval person, Ian Mortimer does, and I think he was able to explain perhaps why he made some of the decisions that he did without just putting it down to him being a greedy wife stealer and throne stealer, which all happened, I suppose. But I really enjoyed this biography for the attempt that he made at getting into Roger's mind. So moving on, just looking at the books around me, trying to figure out what's next, which I think would be, The Black Prince. This is by Michael Jones, and I thought this was an excellent biography on Edward the Black Prince. He is the son of Edward III, who is one of medieval history's most famous kings, um, well known for being a warrior. And the Black Prince was the heir. He had a lot of promise, and I think Michael Jones did a great job of getting helping us understand a bit about his personality. I suppose he's known for having a bit of a temper, um, but also helping us understand the softer side of his personalities, the moments where he was maybe not so self-assured, um, the tragic events in his life. I really enjoyed this biography for detailing his life. And then we'll move on to his brother. This is a biography by Helen Carr called The Red Prince, John of Gaunt. I really enjoyed this because John of Gaunt does not have a very good reputation, even now, or amongst his contemporaries. There were a lot of attempts against his life, people who believed that he just wanted to take the throne for himself. He was seen as greedy and avaricious for his attempts to take the throne of Castile. All of these things happened, but again, that, those there were aspects of his personality where we can see a much more well-rounded individual who loved his family, um, and perhaps he might have just been seen as a very loyal son, brother, uncle, father, in his attempts to do the things that he did. And I think Helen Carr did a great job of trying to tip the balance in the other direction from those negative viewpoints and try to be a bit more objective. I think she maybe went a bit more on the other side, in trying to explain things. So there was a lot of sympathetic language. But I think for the most part, she did a great job of detailing his life. The only thing I would say about this book is there's a lot of typos in this edition, which I found quite irksome, but otherwise, this is a great book. And The Red Prince, if anyone is wondering, I haven't heard him called this before. I think this might be Helen's way of drawing an association between his famous brother, the Black Prince. But if you're familiar with the War of the Roses or English history, the Duchy of Lancaster, or the County of Lancaster, its symbol is the red rose. He was the Duke of Lancaster, hence the Red Prince. Sorry for that really long explanation, but if anyone's wondering. Great bio on a great individual from history. And then, moving on, we have another, oh, that disappeared. This is a terrible title, and you probably can't see it. This is a bio also by Ian Mortimer called The Fears of Henry IV. This is about John of Gaunt's son, Henry IV, who usurped the throne from his cousin Richard II. The Fears of Henry IV, I think that's a very apt title. This is a bio of Henry, also known as Henry Bolingbroke, before he became king. He had so much promise when he came to the throne. Even beforehand, he led such a very blessed life, and then unfortunately after he took the throne, things just sort of went downhill from there, for things beyond his control, things maybe he might have been able to control. But otherwise, a great bio on one of the most unfortunate kings in medieval history. And then I've got one more to share with you. This is not about royalty or anyone in the nobility, but I'm going to throw this in because I really enjoyed it. This is The Friar of Carcassonne. This is by Stephen O'Shea. Stephen O'Shea wrote one of my favorite books, called The Perfect Heresy. This is about the Cathar Inquisition. The Friar of Carcassonne takes place a bit later than the Albigensian Crusade. This is about the Friar Bernard, pardon the French, Bernard de Lisieux, who is trying to stamp out the Inquisition and garner support from secular authority, like the King of France at the time, to really push out the Inquisition from the Languedoc region. So this is a great biography on one of history's probably least understood or least well-known rabble rousers. So great bio. Those are some of my favorite medieval biographies. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Let me know what you think, if you're going to pick any of these up. And like I say, happy Easter if you're celebrating, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.